This short video will change the way you think about IELTS. IELTS will look easier, shorter, and very interesting. We see a lot of people know IELTS can bring great changes in their lives, yet they keep delaying IELTS. Let's see what are the reasons why people keep delaying or even give up on IELTS, despite knowing IELTS can revolutionize their lives and careers. IELTS is an exam that's meant to test your ability of English language, but in order to conduct the assessment, IELTS, I think, has been overcomplicated as a test, because even if you know English quite well, you still cannot just go and get your desired band score. IELTS test has become so complicated because of different types of questions and very strict format requirements of IELTS writing has made it quite a difficult task. That is the reason hundreds and thousands of people around the globe struggle to get their desired band. Yet, a lot of them fail in their first or even second attempt to get the desired band score. So looking around, a lot of people think IELTS is something that is not doable by them, and they give up on their dreams and the great opportunities that IELTS can extend to them. So the question stays, why is IELTS perceived or even experienced to be so difficult? The first thing is IELTS requires your ability in English language, which is a very common problem in all the developing countries, because the education systems in such countries are not conducive to train candidates on any skill, because language is a skill. And the second reason is the complexity of the exam itself. A lot of candidates, like professionals or university students, are quite good at using English language. Still, they fail to get the desired band score in IELTS and they lose confidence, and that's because of the complexity of the exam itself. IELTS, has 4 parts: listening, reading, writing, and speaking, and every part of the exam has its own traps and hurdles, and a candidate must know them well in order to get their optimal band score based on their language ability. And the third thing also comes from the complexity of the exam, that is the lack of exposure. A lot of students say that they're good at English language and they're prepared for IELTS as well, but the topic that they encountered in writing and speaking was quite new to them and they didn't know much about that. That is the reason they could not write well or they could not speak at length on that topic. So in a nutshell, we can say to get your desired band score in IELTS, you need to have language ability to a certain level as required by your band score. There are different language levels like A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, and C2, and you should have language ability at the level of your band score. For example, band 7 is C1, so you cannot get band 7 if your language ability is not at C1. But if your language ability is already at C1, you need to know the test structure as well. And that is the only way you can get band 7, because you have the language ability and at the same time, you understand the exam format as well. And the third thing, you need to have some exposure so that you can discuss things at length when they are asked in writing and speaking. Up till now, I have just discussed as to how difficult IELTS is, but now is the time to explain as to how it can be made quite easier, shorter, and very interesting. My name is Nawaz. I'm an IELTS trainer. I myself got band 8 in each part multiple times, and I did so just to understand as to what the non-native speakers experience as IELTS candidates. Because being non-native is, I think, an advantage to me, because I can actually understand as to what your situation is when you are struggling to get your desired band score. I've been working with IELTS candidates for years, and throughout my career as an IELTS coach, I have been researching and developing the system and the way how I can train the candidates the best. And finally, I have come to this point that I've developed IELTS Precision program. This program is unique in multiple ways. The ultimate goal being getting the candidates their target band score. How we do that? As I told you, there are 3 types of things required to get your desired band score. In this program, we work on each of these things, but in much more detail. Let's start with the first thing, language ability. All the candidates that decide to take IELTS already have some language ability. The first thing is to ascertain as to where they are, whether they are at B1 level, B2, C1, or A2 level. That's very important to determine. That is the reason in IELTS Precision program, there are some assessments just to know as to where you actually lie in your language ability. That's very important. Once we know your level of language ability, We can add to it in order to take you to the desired language ability if that is different. Or if you are already at the desired language ability, we can jump right away with quite a confirmation that your language is good. You just need the exam techniques. So the candidates who are good in English language, they get the verification. And if they are not good, they are actually developed to get their desired language ability. Once the first requirement is achieved, we shift to the second requirement. That's exam format understanding. IELTS has 17 types of total questions in all the 4 parts. So what we do, the best way I could so far research is to micronize all the big tasks into smaller parts. As I've been one of you once, so I know what sort of struggles you have to face. So IELTS Precision Program's listening preparation starts not with any type of question, but with the exam strategy first, as to what we have to achieve and what path we are going to take. After that, the candidates start with accent training. It's very important that I've researched if candidates prepare the accent understanding, their ability to solve IELTS listening improves considerably. So we start with accent training. After that, there are 5 types of questions in IELTS listening, and I train them on only those questions which are required by their band score. The biggest misconception I've ever found in IELTS preparation systems across the world is that every student tries to solve all the questions in IELTS exam. That should not be the way, because if you solve all the questions and solve them accurately, you'd get band 9, which is not required by you, which is not actually required by any of the candidates. When you know your band requirement is 6 or 7 or 8 or 8.5, you have to prepare accordingly. You have to prepare and learn only those type of questions which are required by your target band score. Once you know the strategy, then you learn the techniques, then comes another amazing part of IELTS precision system. That's focused practices. You know, when you try to practice IELTS anywhere, you get the whole exam. For example, if you open listening, you get 5 types of questions in 4 sections. So when you try to practice, your whole concentration and skill is diluted. That's not the case here. In IELTS precision system, if you learn how to solve fill in the blanks type of questions, you get a lot of sets of just one type of questions. Once you master it doing a lot of times, then you move on to the next type of questions. For example, if it is short MCQs as in section 2, then you get a lot of practices of just short MCQs, so that whatever you learned in a lecture, you consolidate it. You sort of reinforce it so that you develop a sort of expertise and mastery in solving each type of questions every day. That's the way how we move forward in IELTS listening. Once you've learned all the types of questions required by your target band score, then we move on to reading. In IELTS reading, I don't start with direct question type techniques. Again, my observation is a lot of candidates, because they are in a hurry when they are in exam because of the pressure, they try to rush in understanding all the text to solve the questions. That is the biggest issue with IELTS reading. A lot of candidates who are otherwise very good in understanding text, but while in IELTS examination, they sort of struggle to understand it because they feel they are running short of time, so they have to rush the things, and in that attempt, they normally don't understand it properly. That is the reason my IELTS reading preparation starts with text comprehension practices. These are very specific, unique practices where you are trained how to understand every sentence, however complex it is. And it has been divided into different levels. Like if you're there to prepare for bands, you just have to practice learning easier and simpler type of sentences. But if your target band score is 8, the system gives you the sentences to practice comprehension, which are at C2 level. So before going to the question type techniques, you train yourself on understanding so that your understanding of the text becomes perfect. This is similar as we practice accent training in IELTS listening, so we do text comprehension practices in IELTS reading. After text comprehension practices in IELTS reading, the students learn question type techniques, only as many as required by their target band score. For example, if I give you a hint, there are 5 types of questions in IELTS listening. The most difficult and time-taking ones are the MCQs, which are normally there in section 3 in general training, and in academic module, it can be anywhere. So I teach my candidates not to touch MCQs if you're planning to target band 7 or lower. So that's the way. You have to learn only as many question types techniques as required by your target band score. Now let's talk about writing and speaking, the expression parts of IELTS. Preparing writing and speaking with IELTS Prescient program is even more interesting. Let's start with writing. It's normally easy for the students who are targeting band 5.5 or 6 to achieve their target band score in IELTS writing, but when you have to go beyond 6.5, because that changes your language ability level for B2 to C1, that's a big jump. And to achieve that, you have to actually change a lot of things. IELTS writing is very strict in terms of its format. You have to follow the exact format and outline as required and demanded by Cambridge ESOL. If you don't follow that pattern, however good you write, you cannot touch band 7. I've seen a lot of students struggling to pass the barrier of 6.5 to reach 7, and they normally fail because they don't understand the structure well, and also most of the students don't even know what their target band score actually requires of them. I can explain it to you right now. The first requirement that you need to satisfy is a task response. Whatever the topic is, you have to discuss it exactly as IELTS or Cambridge ESOL requires. So you need to know the structure, and you need to develop your ideas and back them with examples, and also use all the grammatical devices that can be there in order to develop the flow of the composition. And an IELTS examiner specifically looks, if you have met the task response, then they go for your lexical range. That is a range of the words that you use. You have to display that your range of vocabulary is exactly at C1 level. And to do that, you have to use some collocations, some idiomatic expressions, and you also have to use sophisticated synonyms for common adjectives that we use in our daily life. So up till now, again, I just told you how difficult are the requirements of band 7 in IELTS writing. But now I can roll out as to how we can take you to that specific level. The first thing is language ability that we have already ensured through all the resources and grammar and vocabulary tests. The second thing is to learn the structure. So my candidates first learn how to plan a composition. They don't simply jump to writing practices. So you get a lot of topics, and I demonstrate it to you how to develop your plan on any topic so that you master the skill of making a wonderful plan on any topic that can be there in IELTS writing. Once you're comfortable in making plans, then we move on to every part of composition. For example, first you learn how to write introductory paragraph. There are different constituents that should be there, and I give my candidates a lot of topics just to make the introductory paragraphs. The next practice is to developing your composition based on the plans you made. While preparing for the body paragraphs, you use those specific items from vocabulary and grammar that we prepared as part of C1 language. Because we built the foundation, the base, so it's always easy to incorporate in your composition all the grammatical devices and the lexical devices in order to demonstrate that your lexical and grammatical range are exactly at C1 level or whatever is required by your target band score. So by then, what you would have achieved, language ability, outline and structure, and all the paragraphing and all the discussion. And the final thing, we cannot risk not having ideas on any topic. So I give you an organized resource where you can go through all the ideas that has been discussed in IELTS books. Even if you haven't encountered them in past, you can develop your composition based on those ideas and examples, and you can also use those ideas in your speaking part. And finally, to ensure that your composition is exactly at the level that it should be, you always get very clear checklist as per your band score requirement. Let me give you an example of what this checklist is based on. It tells you exactly as to which ones and how many grammatical devices you have to use in order to satisfy the requirement of grammatical and lexical range of your target band score. So following this system, we ensure every aspect of your writing is developed to get your desired band score. And finally, let's talk about the speaking part. We've got resources and we've got some format hacks that can give you extra points of eloquence in part 1 and part 3. Part 3 is sometimes challenging for many of the students with limited professional or occupational exposure because in part 3, candidates may have to encounter such questions which they might not have thought about. Again, the resource I impart as part of the program can help you understand all of those topics that have been there in the past IELTS tests and IELTS books. So in a short time, you can develop your exposure exactly at the level there where you can satisfy the task response of any topic.